Welcome to another episode of the Sunday Superversive Livestream. I am your host, Benjamin Wheeler, and I'm here today with my co host, Anthony Marquetta, as always, and our guest, Isaac Young. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, thank you. I'm very excited to be on here. Thank you for having me on.
It's our pleasure. We always like promoting authors and their work. Um, we've met each other on Twitter quite a bit. Your main book is The Matryoshka Divide, which can be found on Amazon through the link we have in the description. Is there anything else you'd like to promote?
Right now, I'm currently writing a sequel to the Matryoshka Divide. It is on Royal Road. It's called the Phyllis Razor. And the other project I'm working on is on my Substack. Um, it's called the Domes of Calrathia. It's sort of a Catholic take on Dark Souls, but more science fiction.
And to me, that's very funny because Dark Souls is very much a Japanese look at certain
Well,
Catholicism sort of things.
it's more of the tone of Dark Souls.
Yeah.
I wanted to create something that was in Dark Souls. You sort of you look at it and you know that there's more to the story going on,
Hmm.
and you're just interested in putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. And I wanted to sort of recreate that in the book.
Hey, that's pretty good stuff. Uh, I think it's a quite a skill that's lost. I was recently reading not reading, I was having a short story read to me where um, it was one of those horror stories, and it's like, oh, look at that, they've introduced the patriarch of the town, and it's the patriarch of the town. He's evil. Wowee, would you believe it, in a wholesome Midwest town? And it's like,
Yeah.
no, this is surface level. I read it from the very first words. You can't do that. So I appreciate your effort into making mysteries mysteries again. Um, the Butler did it indeed. You also have a trailer for the Matryoshka Divide, which I will play now with your blessing.
Yep. Go ahead.
The year is 7233. Humanity has conquered a silent and desolate galaxy. The first ships that once raced across the stars found barren worlds and primeval wastes. Few bore single-celled organisms, and fewer still anything resembling life. Mankind's dreams of contacting a sentient race has been extinguished. The great question has been answered. We are alone in the universe. But the stars did not remain empty for long. The galactic spiral arm is now filled with a million protectorates. Some stretch across 10,000 worlds, and some claim only a single star system. Some are republics and democracies, and others are mighty imperial kingdoms. Some have raised up arms for God, and others for revolution. The only thing tying them all together is the free exchange, a bureaucracy which has declared itself the servants of galactic affairs. There is only one law of this galactic order: humanity first. Artificial intelligence can never be allowed to replace men. There can be no further alterations to mankind's genetic code. There will never be a successor to the human race, and all who disagree are hunted down with extreme prejudice. Yet even with mankind against them, there are those who still defy the free exchange's rule. Cabals play host to hidden laboratories and secret caches. Terrorists and pirates and smugglers dabble with forbidden technologies. And out on the frontier, transhuman cults endlessly tinker, hoping to bring about an end to the long tyranny. So it is, and has been for the 4,000-year reign of the free exchange. However, A signal from a lost colony ship threatens to send the galaxy back into chaos. The Free Exchange has put together an expedition in search of the impossible. Only time will tell who shall decide the fate of the known universe.
Ah, very good. Very exciting. Lost Colony Ships is a personal favorite of mine, from Galaxy's Edge to even Star Wars on very rare occasions. So I'm pretty interested in this. Uh, and that's your voice actor was Son of Sonnet, who is well, I'll have him on the show someday, I'm sure. But a voice actor who often shows up in our mutuals. Um, I think he did quite well.
Yeah, I was very, very happy with his work. It was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, uh, it's certainly a ringing endorsement. I believe he has a Fiverr. Uh, be sure to check him out. Uh, so Lost Colony ship returns. Galactic Order is threatened. Why don't you tell us a little more about it?
So the Matryoshka divide, its universe is where basically science has progressed to its furthest limits, and any step forward now means transhumanism.
Mm,
And basically, the main question of the series is where do we go once we can no longer progress any further?
right. I like it. Uh, hmm. Yeah, I like it. It's an interesting question because I see it answered so many times, and for some of them, it seems like the answer is, yeah, man, let's go full transhuman. Like screw the flesh. I'm getting my metal body and my metal abs. Thank you kindly. Um, whereas other people seem to fear it absolutely. The loss of our flesh is implicitly also our loss of humanity. How would you describe yourself in that sort of vein?
I'm in the right leaning camp. I don't. I think progress has done great things for mankind,
Of
but the
course.
problem is as we continue, we're increasingly making trade-offs we can't really afford to make. If you take a look at the modern world right now, we're more atomized, deracinated. Uh, if you know the term bugmen,
Of course.
yeah, like it's once technology is no longer serving us and instead leeching off us, that's when we need to stop and consider where we're going and why are we taking this direction, and maybe probably should take another direction.
Of course. That's something I agree to as well. I firmly believe that even our very souls are directly connected to the state of our body. Uh, and that's something that many science fiction writers tend to ignore because then what happens is that they quite unhealthy gentlemen, we'll say, um, more often than not. I think they try to cope in a way uh, by being able to change. If only they had the panacea, uh, they would no longer uh, be what they are. Uh, hmm. At least
If
in
I
the
may interject, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
no, go for
Yeah, if I may interject for the first time, hi, I'm Anthony. Ben knows you better than I do. Anyway,
it.
uh, when I think of this topic, I think of the times it's really not explored in fiction all that well a lot of the time, in my opinion. Like I think that Ghost in the Shell, for example, does an interesting job with it. Uh, though I have heard people opine to me uh, that they think that Ghost in the Shell is very dumb, which, I don't know. Maybe I just haven't thought it through enough, but I always thought it did a decent job. But generally speaking, I hold to a very Thomistic viewpoint on this whole issue. This idea of humanity without a body almost doesn't make sense. It sort of makes sense, but not exactly. The way that you would conceive of a sort of humanity without a body, I once saw somebody give this as which I thought was a really strong analogy. It's like coffee with coffee grounds versus coffee. Uh, so the coffee grounds would be something like the soul, right? It is the essential part of a person that survives even if everything else is gone. And this is what happens when we die. The coffee grounds, as an analogy, remain. So that is still essentially coffee, but you're not fully coffee. You're missing what it is to fully realize what you are, which an analogy would be the liquid and things that would turn you into a full drink, or in this case, the body. This is how both the survival of the soul after death and the resurrection of the body makes sense, right? Uh, it's this idea that when you lose your body, you have lost something that is essential to making you fully what you are, even if the essential part of you that is needed for survival is still there. You are not complete until there is a body. That's one of the reasons that in Christianity, resurrection of the body is an essential Christian doctrine. Having us all as disembodied souls would be having us as essentially incomplete creatures, right? The angels are complete without bodies, the humans are not. So when I see a lot of these shows are like you could replace your body with machine parts, I think we need to remember that even in things like prosthetics, amputations, replacement with robot limbs, what we are doing is essentially substituting for the fact that what should be working properly is not, right? And I think that that's what's missing in a lot of these things. This idea of transhumanity, you can go beyond and above and better than humanity, I think is just fundamentally false at a very core philosophical level, if that makes sense to both of you.
Yep. I think I think that you can try to go beyond humanity, but it will never ever be better or more advanced. You would just be cutting off essential parts of yourself, maybe for the trade-off of living a longer life.
Mm. That's a common trope,
Yeah,
immortal
the
life at what cost? Not that I think it's a bad trope, of course.
you see it in people like Stephen Hawking, right? Now, I'm not saying that Stephen Hawking necessarily did anything wrong in surviving in the state he was in for so long, right? I don't think that, but it does kind of raise the question of like, are you staying alive just for your mind? Are you staying alive because you believe that your life has some sort of intrinsic value? Now, the problem that I see with Hawking isn't so much that he stayed alive, which I believe, as long as he was capable of doing, he had every right to do, right? He has no obligation to let himself die just because it would take less technology, and I'm not implying that he would. However, I question Hawking's motives here because Hawking was an atheist and did not really believe in any sort of inherent value to to humanity as such. He did not believe in a value to keeping yourself alive because your life was given to you by a creator, and it was a gift on loan to you from someone else, and finding value in that way. Instead, he kept himself alive because he liked doing science, to my understanding. Uh, and that is a motivation I wonder about because I wonder how well it's going to work at motivating other people, right? I can't do science like Stephen Hawking. Uh, I would never be able to, even if I tried. I will freely admit that Hawking is a genius far beyond my abilities. Uh, so, given that, if I were to suffer the illness of Stephen Hawking, what reason do I have for keeping myself alive anymore?
Well, I mean,
Go ahead.
number one is that atheists will always say that they don't believe in values, but 95% of them do to a certain extent. They won't come out and say it. It's a bit of a bait and switch. As for the question of why are you alive, I always just think it's the value of a person is not in their IQ or their contribution to society. Well, it's not in their IQ, and it's not in this abstract contribution to society where, oh hey, if you're not materially advancing the human race, then what are you doing? The human being is valuable in of itself.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. And in these sorts of transhuman stories, I think that's where the disconnect happens. This idea of what is the value of a human being? Is a human being valuable in and of himself, or is he valuable based on his abilities and what he can do for society, right? Uh, because if a human being is valuable in and of himself, then that raises the question of what sorts of alterations are even worth making, right? You if you're already valuable. If a healthy and this also has the corollary, right? And this goes back to like the Thomistic ideas that I was thinking of earlier, which is that the exemplar of what a human being is meant to be is a healthy and well functioning human being, right? Somebody who grows and is functioning exactly in the way that a human being is supposed to function, right? But not somebody who goes beyond those things. You're now no longer the exemplar of a human being, you're something else entirely. And then the question becomes at what point is the something else something not right? And this is why, as you said, when you see in real life people who try and outpace, shall we say, humanity, it always comes with a major cost. So the main thing I'm thinking of here is in sports. I'm a baseball fan. Uh, I don't know if anybody, if you are. I know Ben isn't, but I don't know if you are. But the steroid era in sports is very notable here. So you have this era in the 1990s to early 2000s where players start taking steroids at an absolutely crazy pace. Now they always had been, but it ramps up considerably in the late 90s and early 2000s. Records start being broken, right? But it was against the rules, and more importantly, or at least it ended up against the rules. Initially, it wasn't against the rules; it was just considered kind of embarrassing if you were caught doing it. But then they made it against the rules. But the reason that they made against the rules is because steroid use is actually extremely unhealthy long term, right? And not even that long term, like within a few years, it does really weird and bizarre things to your body. You've gone beyond humanity. You're stronger than a human being is able to be naturally, right? You are essentially transhuman in a very limited way because of the drugs in your system. Uh, or, for example, they would take HGH, which would allow them to heal from injuries faster. But so you're now in this transhuman state, but it comes at the cost of long-term health and the mind and messing up various functions in your body.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's transhumanism is not it's not just mind uploading. It's basically any use of technology to uh, try to transcend limitations. And I'm not saying that oh hey, we need to return to the Stone Age, but I am saying is there's always going to be trade offs, and you need to be very careful about what sort of trade offs you make.
Yep, exactly.
I
Uh,
I agree with that. There's to me, like, because I grew up in the baseball steroid era, and of course uh was a big fan of Mark McGuire, who was the St. Louis, slugger of the era. And to me, it was never an issue because you still had to hit that 100-mile-an-hour ball being thrown by a roided out pitcher, who, who is desperately trying to not make McDonald's give out free Big Macs because uh, um, Mark McGuire just, hit one into that, Big Mac land. et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, but the balance of it, plus everyone was doing it. But the
Yep.
balance of it comes down to, the health, the example to the children. There was a soul issue that the body issue was directly causing. Um, I suppose in many science fiction pieces, to bring it back to the Matryoshka divide, many of the transhumanist uh, literature that I've read completely discounts the soul. In fact, I would even say that they only believe in the intellect, that is the brain matter parts of you, um, in a sort of personality kind of way, not necessarily the soul itself.
Yeah, there's also another thing that's really overlooked in that the mind is not something that it, the way people look at the mind, they think, oh hey, I'm the puppet master, and the meat part of me is the puppet, and they're just two separate things. No, the mind and the body are interconnected in ways we probably can't even imagine. You
Yep.
can't have the human mind without the human body.
It is well known from science that is coming out now that there's a direct connection between the health of the body and the health of the mind. It's why the importance of things like no-fap, eating right, being healthy is of supreme importance, especially for Christians.
Interesting thing. I don't know if this is probably pseudoscience, but it's interesting to me. But you hear frequently stories of people getting organ transplants, adopting the behavior of the person whose organ got put in them.
I
I
believe
don't
it.
know. I don't know the veracity of any of this stuff, and I'm not saying it's true by any means, but it's very interesting to me, and I'm going to look into it further.
I think that's a rich and fertile ground. I know that there's a famous schlock horror film that has what is it? Like the guy's hand is amputated, and so he has to have, another hand given to him, but the hand turns out to be the hand of a killer. So he, uh, you know, has to stop his own right hand, or left hand rather, from, killing people and stuff, which I thought was pretty it was fine. It was funny. It was kind of weird. I think he shoves his hand into a blender at the end. Uh, I can't remember.
That's one
Well,
way to solve that problem. A simple hacksaw might have done better, but
I can't remember. Like it was one of those things I saw when I was like 10 or something. For some reason, I'm just so against organ donation. I can't tell you guys why.
Why you're against organ donation?
Well, after I told you guys about the story about the killer's hand taking over a guy and etc.
Oh, because I had like a serious
Oh
I had a
no,
serious response to that.
there are serious responses. But like my brother was an organ donor, and it's a comfort to my mother that there are parts of him helping other people. But to me, it freaks me out that there's still living parts of my brother in other people after his passing. And I have told them with no uncertain terms that my organs are mine and they are to be buried with me. Thank you very much.
I once saw somebody make an argument against organ donation. Now, this is with the disclaimer that I am certain that there are going to be people who are listening who received donated organs. So, sorry about that. But, hey, we're just being honest. So, I once saw somebody make it, and I never really analyzed it in depth, so I'm not saying I agree with it, but they made an argument against organ donation where they asked the very pointed question: what exactly is the relevant difference between organ donation and cannibalism? And they were like, see, they go, seriously, I haven't really seen anybody try and make a relevant distinction. But then you're calling into some really, really thorny issues at that point, Because then you go, okay, so what about blood donation? And then once you go there, you're like, so many people would be dead right now. Like, so many. It would be insane.
The
Uh,
blood is the life, Anthony.
yeah. So it's almost like a rock you don't want to turn over because you're not going to like the answer. Like I have seen people argue on very plausible grounds, and this I do agree with, even though that the implications are extremely uncomfortable for people. That the criteria that we currently use for brain death is terrible criteria for determining death. And in fact, there is only one reliable criterion for determining when death definitely begins, and that is the start of decomposition, which is not that long, right? Like that sounds like, oh, you mean wait days or whatever. No, it means wait a few hours, right? That's when it starts. But up until the point where the body starts decomposing, every other marker of death is not reliable as a marker of death. All of them have shown to have been reversed at certain times. In rare situations, yes, but at times. Decomposition has not, right? Once that starts, then the body is well and truly dead. The problem with this is that once you actually agree with this argument, you have effectively completely upended the entire medical establishment. Like, almost all organ donation is now totally obliterated. Uh, right? And so many end of life decisions of like when to unplug, when to whatever, right? They just get totally obliterated. It's one of those rocks people are very uncomfortable about turning over, even though the arguments for it are quite sound.
I'm sure. Have you played any space exploration or 4X games, Isaac?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I had a. All right. So over last Christmas, I got Stellaris, and I blinked, and the like it was January, and I was like, I need to separate myself from this game before
Right.
before it's too late. Um,
How many of those games have, like organ training, on the galactic scale? Uh, ugh.
yeah, I played a lot of played X4 Foundations. It's a bit of niche, but it's also a 4X game, just from a different
Right.
perspective. Endless Space 2, Masters of Orion, and a few others.
Oh yeah, but I'm just thinking of all the ones I know where you have massive amounts of organ trading on the open market, possibly ethically sourced, most likely not. Let's be real. These space pirates don't exactly ethically source anything. Um, and so it's another argument against the organ donation thing, just on the fact of space pirates could one day steal your organs for a tidy profit.
Now, they're already doing that. I can guarantee you that. There's illegal groups will kidnap people and carve them up.
Oh yeah. I recently saw a video on China on that very thing. I think,
Yeah.
quite frankly, science fiction often doesn't go far enough with their, shall we say, depravity of man sort of deal. Um, you know, there's depths that technology can take us further than we ever imagined. I'm sure.
There was a short story I recall reading a long time ago in in the old Jason Rennie sci-fi journal, I think it was in, and I cannot remember who wrote it, though it was probably someone that we know.
David
But
Halquist,
it
if
was
it's the one
about
I'm thinking
somebody
about.
who, what was that?
If it's the one I'm thinking about, it's probably David Halquist.
It might be, but I'm thinking of it was a short story about somebody uploaded their mind into a computer and then it got hacked with a computer virus.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Uh, I do not remember the story in detail. I only really remember that it existed, but I remember the idea being so clever that it was one of those ideas that, you ever hear an idea that you're mad you didn't think of it first because it's such a cool idea, and now as soon as you hear it, you want to do it. That's what I thought of when I heard that concept of like, oh, you upload your mind to a computer, then you get hacked with a computer virus, and I'm like, damn it, that's so cool. I wish I did that. Uh, that's one of those things. And it's kind of also, as I think about it, one of the reasons that I don't accept this idea, again, going to a philosophical level, an uploaded mind is not the same mind. Have you ever played or heard of, either of you, the game Soma?
Oh yeah, I
I've
didn't
heard of
get
it.
through it, but I've seen so many videos on that video game.
Yeah, I watched a full Let's Play of it. It's not a game that I think I would particularly enjoy playing, but I was really, really impressed by the story of it. So, the story of the game is, of course, all about uploaded minds, and it takes place in the future, and humanity is basically extinct. And you, the main character, are a mind who's been uploaded into some sort of like underwater robot, and you're communicating with another uploaded mind in like the onboard computer of your underwater station that you're using. And your goal right now is that the last minds of humanity are have been saved on some sort of hard drive that your intention is to launch into space so that the minds can essentially last forever, right? And that's the plot of the game. And the theory is that you will eventually have your mind uploaded into the hard drive as well, and then you will be shot into space with them. And but it's like a digitally enhanced, nice. It's a nice place, right? But there is a scene in the game that is honestly one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen, where at one point you need to leave the station that you're on, so you need to upload your mind into another suit and go out into the water in that suit. And when you do this, you come back, and you think that once you uploaded your mind, the original mind is gone, but it's not. It's still there in the other suit, and you realize that that original version of you that you were playing through most of the game with is still uploaded into that suit. Only they're just stuck there. They can't move. So you need to make the choice if you're just going to leave it or if you're going to unplug the mind and just let the suit die off so that you're the only one left. The game ends with you succeeding and shooting it off, but then you're waiting for yourself to get uploaded onto the hard drive. And the final twist of the game is you're not uploaded. Only a copy of your mind is uploaded. You are still stuck in the underwater space station. And you realize that this was the plan all along. They just did not tell you because they knew that it would freak you out. And the game ends with the AI voice, or the not AI, like the human uploaded voice who you've been talking with, blinks out as the power starts to die in the station, leaving you alone. And then there's a final cutscene where they show the inside of the hard drive that's been shot into space, and you and that AI mind meet each other, the copies of that mind. But this is an excellent example of why it leads to absurdities when you talk about things like uploaded minds, right? Like, are you saying that it's that easy to create essentially full clones, right? And also, which one is the original person? Are any of them the original person? Do they even count? I would argue no.
Yeah, if mind uploading is ever, I mean, I know that some people are going to try and use Chat GPT to mimic dead people.
Ugh,
I think they've already tried it.
they did.
Um, um, but mind uploading, if it ever becomes a thing, first off, you're not uploading, you're not making a copy. You're just trying to make a best approximation. and it's not going to be anything like the original. I don't think you can upload a human soul into a computer. But the important thing is it's going to be a copy. It's not going to be you. You're not going to even if it were somehow theoretically possible to upload a soul into a computer, it's not going to be you uh, who's going to get to experience digital salvation. What's going to happen is you're going to be left there in the chair, and you're going to see your digital equivalent wander off.
Yep. David Halquist wrote a short story exactly like that, where a scientist is moving his mind from his old decrepit body to another more beautiful body. Um, and basically the idea is that it's mind transference from one body to another body, like changing your clothes. Uh, and of course, by the end of it, um, uh, there are three minds. It's a very good horror story. The first mind is in the ancient body, which is actively dying. The second is in the intermediate hard drive that was created during the transfer, and of course the third one is in the final body. And the second one realizes that he is just as much a person as either of the other two minds, and he watches himself shut the machines down, effectively deleting him. Very good stuff.
I wrote a short story where basically suicide clinics are set up, as they are unfortunately today, where they give out basically free mind uploading as long as you kill yourself afterwards.
Uh,
And that's used as a motivation.
Oh wow, that's a clever idea. I like that. It reminds me of there's a fantastic joke in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and this is gonna sound unrelated at first, but I'm gonna bring it back to make the connection. So bear with me a second. uh, there is a fantastic joke in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, specifically in the restaurant at the end of the universe, which is the second book. Uh, in the restaurant at the end of the universe, they go to the restaurant, and the cow that is going to be their steak is their waiter.
uh,
So, and Arthur is horrified by this, and the other people who are sitting with them are confused why he's so horrified. And they said, "I don't understand. You eat steak, right?" And he goes, "Well, yes." And he goes, "Do you ask the cow if they want to be made into steak?" "Well, no, right?" And he goes, "And they don't want to be killed, correct?" Goes, "Well, no, they don't. They don't, but still." He goes, "Well, he does want to be killed. He just said he was okay with it." And then the cow like makes a joke and goes, "Yeah, I'm cool with it." It's like that's the whole idea. And they go, "So we've solved the problem. What are you upset about?" And Arthur can't explain what he's upset about, so he's just like, "I don't know, but I'm not doing it."
Well, the bait and
And
switch, oh sorry.
go ahead, say what you gotta say.
Well, the bait and switch there is that cows aren't people, and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has like it's a talking cow, so it's a human being, it's a human's mind, but
Oh yes, you're right. That's the bait and
that's
switch.
how he
Though
pulls
honestly,
that off. That's how he
yeah,
pulls that little narrative stunt off.
in
Because
fact, though, that's the
it
genius
seems,
of the scene.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, in fact, though, you're exactly right, but that's the genius of the scene. The genius of the scene is that it completely nukes like vegan ideology, right? Like pretty much all of it. It completely drops the nuclear bomb on all of it because it is very obvious that there is an essential difference between a sapient creature who is going to kill himself and serve himself to you as food and an animal who you kill, right? And eat as food. But the problem is vegans don't acknowledge this fact. So Hitchhiker's Guide makes the change very, very obvious. And yet it is impossible to say, so it makes it so obvious that it is impossible to acknowledge what the problem is without acknowledging the basic fact of the matter that sapient creatures are very, very different from farm animals, right? Like, that's the fundamental difference. It's not consent, right? It's not anything else. It's the sapience. But of course, you have this entire subclass of people who claim that there is no difference, right? That the difference is one of kind, not or of degree, not kind, right? But the lie is exposed when put into such stark terms like that. Because they're right. If it really is just a difference of degree and not kind, then what's the problem, right? Haven't we just solved the issue? You kill a cow and it doesn't give you permission. Well, now the cow is giving you permission, so problem solved. Well, what sort of a cow gives you permission? It's a great little gag. And where I was going with this is I really like this idea of these stories you know, eh, science fiction, I think, can be used in a very clever way to bring to light certain ideas by bringing them out to their implications in very particular ways, right? Uh, there's another excellent one, Philip K. Dick, of all people. So, as a disclaimer here, I want to say that Philip K. Dick was definitely a leftist. There is no doubt about that. If you read his writings, he was a typical, he was way into drugs and things like that. That was his big thing with like Scanner Darkly and whatever. But he wrote perhaps the single most powerful anti-abortion story I have ever read. He was very anti-abortion, Philip K. Dick. And he wrote a story where they essentially were rounding up 10-year-old kids who were below a certain threshold of intelligence and killing them. And it was one of the creepiest stories I have ever read, and it was brilliant. And the point of the story was honestly not that dissimilar from what Douglas Adams was doing and what even like David Halquist was doing and what Soma was doing, which is you take this idea and now you draw out its implications to see where it would lead you, and you realize it's actually quite disastrous.
Hmm.
Yeah, a lot of talking points. People will not follow them to their logical conclusions until the slippery slope kicks in, and suddenly we're in the year of our Lord 2023, and millions of babies are being aborted every year.
Yep. Proudly too. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's then there's other things like I was going to make a joke about furries, year of our Lord 2023, and furries, so many furries, and of course you peel off that band-aid and then you discover every fetish that a furry loves. A furry, yeah, hold on a second, let me search up something. I'll be right back. uh
Yeah, so I wonder too, as I'm thinking this over, if there is a connection with this idea of transhumanism and current transsexuality. It
But
seems to me that there must be, right?
the entire trans movement is transhuman. It's basically trying to transcend your gender to become the other one. The entire thing is transhuman.
Yeah, because it seems to me that's the only way to imagine it. Because if you don't see humanity and what makes you a human and what makes you a certain individual, namely your sexual identity, or not, sorry, I'm going to take that back, not sexual identity, your sex, right? Uh, Gender isn't real, friends. There is only sex. Anyway, uh,
it's true.
yeah, just of your friendly reminder from Superversive Livestream. But anyway, so things like your sex and stuff like that, things that make you not only a human but you the individual specific human that you are things that are arbitrary and that you can transcend because there is an essential part of yourself that is beyond what your body is. And really transhumanism is gnostic, right? Uh, because the original Gnostic, the old Gnostic heresy, was that the body is needs to be destroyed, and it is the intellect, the spirit, the mind that really matters, right? Uh, but of course, that's a lie, right? The lie is that there's a dual lie here. On one hand, there's the materialist lie that we are only our bodies, right? And when our body is destroyed, then we are destroyed. And then there is the Gnostic lie that, and I will admit that even some creators who I greatly admire make this error, I believe unintentionally. Like C.S. Lewis had said things that I think indirectly hint at this error. It's the Gnostic lie that the body is just a shell that holds our intellects, right? And our spirits and our souls. But that's not true either. Yeah, we're a body and soul hybrid. Uh
Mm-hmm.
the problem becomes like C.S. Lewis had a quote where he goes, "Stop saying that you are a soul in the body. You are a soul, you have a body." Or that you have a soul. You are a soul, you have a body. I understand what Lewis is saying, but I think that he's wrong. I am not a soul that has a body. I am a soul and a body, right? And when I die, I will be a soul that is missing my body, right? I will essentially be lesser than what I am designed to be. It's not that a part of me that isn't essential has been stripped away and the real me has survived. It's that a part of me that makes me fully me and complete is dead and only another part has survived. It is not that dissimilar from losing an arm. You wouldn't stop saying that your arm is, your body. You have a body, right? Like you have a body, but you don't have an arm or whatever. It doesn't really make sense when you put it in that way. And I think that there's an error there in assuming that you are either one or the other is the extreme. You're either the body only with no soul, and therefore, however you shape the body, they lead to weirdly similar conclusions, right? Because the materialist will then say that however you shape the body is how it is. If you conduct surgery to make the body look or act or function differently than it is, then you have changed who you are, right? This is why you could do surgery on people and change their sex. Uh, on the flip side of this is the Gnostic heresy, which is that the body does not matter, it's only the mind, and it leads to the exact same conclusion. It leads to the conclusion that you can shape the body however you want because it's only the mind that matters.
I
Yeah,
think,
that pretty much sums it up.
yep. There, even for the groups that do consider the body to be morphic and very important to things like personality and development, especially in the transsexual community. Uh, they they clearly delineate how they feel, what their body is, and what their soul is. Uh, their mind experiences the difficulties of being in between two places, uh, in their own mad way, because it is an insanity. Uh, their body is, of course, not what they want it to be, even though it is formed in a way um, that makes them either male or female. And then, of course, they believe their true soul is actually that of the opposite gender, or a wolf in some cases. Um, in the case of the furry, the true menace. Um, it is no exaggeration or hyperbole that furries endorse all evil. I do not believe there is a single good furry out there. No, sir. I'm sure there is good furries, but I don't want to meet
They're
one.
not good because they're furries. They're good in spite of the fact that they're furries.
There we go. Somebody said it for me.
Yeah.
But jokes aside, you
I
know,
once
hmm?
read a story, and I don't go first, Ben. My story's not very important. It's just a joke.
of course, we're talking about this, in relation to the Matryoshka divide. A society that has had 4,000 years to develop, or perhaps more accurately, stagnate, um, must certainly have their own questions and answers. What other questions do you have the your society, the exchange? It's called the exchange, right?
Yeah, the free exchange.
The free
Uh,
exchange.
they're so in the Matryoshka divide, the free exchange are basically bureaucrats. They are people who maintain um, interstellar travel. They maintain communication services, and they also basically regulate breaches of galactic law. What? But they're not an like they're not like a power in the traditional sense.
Hmm.
In the free exchange, there are millions of protectorates who are basically just regular societies. It was in the trailer. Democracies, imperial
Mm-hmm.
kingdoms, yada yada yada, and basically, the free exchange sort of rules from the shadows. They control things, but it's the protectorates that look like that they have the power.
Right. I gotcha. Uh, sure.
But basically, the idea was inspired from my personal favorite book series, Foundation, by Isaac Asimov. Um, basically, in that series, what happens is this scientist called Hari Seldon. He invents this new brand of science called psychohistory, which allows him to predict the rise and fall of the empire. It basically allows him to see how societies rise and crumble and rise and crumble. And he sees that the empire he's currently living in is going to go through a collapse. And basically, his response to that is to create a foundation um, to serve as a bastion of science and technology amidst the collapse and shorten the coming dark ages to only 1,000 years. But what happens in the story is that Isaac Asimov, the writer, he he's a rationalist through and through, and basically what he sees is okay. Let's have all the smart people. Like it's a technocratic solution. Let's have all the smart people in the room, and together we're going to come up with a solution that is going to basically solve all our problems through science. Yada yada yada. It's ruled by expert.
Mm.
And I'm taking that same idea with the free exchange and seeing what, in my opinion, would actually happen if a class of bureaucrats had access to that sort of power.
Oh yeah. That's always a pretty good conceit, especially since even Asimov was like, yeah, they probably wouldn't be as great as I'm selling. So they've got, a second foundation, in there, and what happens when you have people you can't predict. Um, it is one of those things that's ripe for more than I think people give these ideas credit for, and hopefully we'll give more credit to in the future. Hmm. That and things like the cold equations from John C. Wright's Count to Eschaton series. There's plenty of great work there, and quite frankly, I've never seen a single author who's worth reading anyway, honestly say, yeah, totally would work exactly how I'm saying it. course, there would be no conflict if it worked perfectly. One of the things I remember very carefully from Isaac Asimov's Foundation series is when somebody actually goes, "Yeah, like we completely missed several broadcasts from Harry Seldon just because nobody cared. You know, things were going good."
One of my favorite scenes is in Foundation and Empire. They put on they all go to the broadcast room, and Harry Seldon's talking about something completely different. And then right at that moment, the mule ships are in orbit and they're firing on the city, and it's just complete pandemonium.
Yep. It's I the mule. I don't think anyone gives him enough credit for actually making the Foundation like worthwhile to think about. Just because of his disruption on the world that these guys live in.
He's one of my favorite villains. I wouldn't necessarily call him a villain. He's not.
No.
He's one of my favorite antagonists.
Yes. Like I'm it's like more of a shock that Harry Seldon wouldn't expect warlords and usurpers to show up and in great numbers.
Well, it wasn't so much. It wasn't so much warlords and usurpers. What made the mule special was because of his mutant telepathic powers.
Oh, that's right.
And
Yes.
what allowed him to transcend psychohistory was he could take control of people's minds, and that allowed him to transcend the social predictive forces of psychohistory.
Right. And of course, to me, that sounds like it's always sort of like struck me as a soft metaphor for Christianity because of the fact that Christianity done right does change the fundamental nature of somebody who has accepted Christ into their life. No longer bound by sin, but instead by the blood of Christ. I.e., I'm saying that psychohistory could only work on a non-Christian people.
Well, I mean, all cultures and all religions have an impact and shape people just as much
Sure.
as people shape cultures and religions. I think actually cultures and religions shape people more so than people think.
Oh yeah. What I'm talking about more is the how should I put it? Like the absolute predictability of somebody who thinks he has all human nature worked out. There's more to say things like generosity and honor in war than simply the act of it. Though Asimov is certainly very questionable in his religious beliefs as well as personal mores. So who knows how well he understood any of it.
I think he understood. I think that he made several key assumptions that were wrong. The first being that number one is his rationalist tendencies made him blindsided into the fact that the human species is not in any way rational.
Right.
The second problem is the idea that if you can put all the smart people in the room, that they'll fix all the problems. The main issue with that is that it's assuming they're acting outside of the system and immune from its pressures and forces.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is that there's no outside of the system.
Yes.
People are always operating within an institutional context, and there are very often, in fact, there's a lot of forces that determine who gets to make the decisions, and you can't just. There's no theoretical room where you could transcend that.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. Sort of like what we're seeing with a lot of like right wing dissident circles, is that in the end they're shouting about a room that exists, but we're still on Twitter talking about this, and even if we're on something like sociogalactic or social galactic or Gab or other places, it just merely limits the size of the room that you're in. You know, you can't you'll never have a true
So the
libertarian.
recently,
Hmm?
yeah, sorry. The what I was going to say is the recently deceased sci-fi author Michael Flynn, uh, and may he rest in peace. He was excellent author. He wrote a book that was his own take. I would describe it as such. I'm not sure if he would have, but his own take on Asimov's psychohistory called "In the Country of the Blind" that I believe was much more accurate. And in his take on it, it's an alternate history where they created Babbage's calculating machine. I don't know if you've ever heard of Charles Babbage and Babbage's calculating machine. It was an early design for a computer. It was never made in Babbage's lifetime. Years later, they did make like models based off of his specifications, and they did work. So Babbage is considered one of the early pioneers of the computer, right? So it's a world where a group of people managed to make Babbage's calculating machine and then start observing the course of events in history and using the calculating machines to calculate how those events would happen and how they could influence history in the way of the psychohistorians of Asimov, right? Kind of, anyway. He called it cleology in his version. But the clever conceit here is that they miss something. They miss, they miss something that causes the Civil War to break out, like the American Civil War. And the only way that they could get their version of history back on track is by making sure that the president is assassinated, which they do, and this causes a rift in the organization. And other organizations which also are trying to shape the course of history,
Th-
but disagree with the ends of the original organization form, and start themselves trying to influence history behind the scenes. And then they learn that there are actually even more secret organizations working behind the scenes of them, including one mysterious secret organization that seems to be moving to some sort of particular end goal that when they figure out that they're discovered by the other secret organizations, starts to hunt down the other organizations and kill everybody who is a part of them. I think this is more accurate than Asimov's psychohistorians because they are quite correct that there is a fundamental level where you go, okay, so you're saying that they can influence the course of history. Well, who's to say that everybody who is a part of or has heard of this organization agrees with where history is going to end up, right? Like,
yep.
or agrees with the direction that history is going. That is a big and fundamental issue. And granted, Asimov does kind of explore it with the character of the mule in Foundation 2. Uh, but ultimately, it's just Aquinas believed in the myth of progress, right? The Marxist belief that we're eventually going to be heading towards this ultimate utopia state, and all you needed was the good guys would always be on the side of this utopia, so the good guys are always going to be pushing in this direction. But life isn't so simple, right? Good people can disagree on ends, and in fact, I think that's probably why, on what the good outcome is, I think that's probably why Flynn used the Civil War as his point, because it's a perfect microcosm of this, right?
Yep.
Where you have both sides believing that they are the proper inheritors of the American Republic and its ideals, and both sides believing that they are doing the good, righteous, and just moral thing. And yet, one of them, they're clearly opposed in some fundamental ways. So one of them needs to be wrong. And even if they're not wrong, to say that everybody's going to agree on the sort of end state that you're going to end up in is false. And it's also false to say that they're willing to accept whatever needs to be done in order to reach that end state. How many eggs need to be broken to make the omelet, right?
There's a very easy example, Catholic versus Protestant. If someone were to say, let's do a secret organization with Cleometry, to do return America to Christianity. Okay, it's going to be Catholic. No, not on your life. Horrible things will have to happen to me and other people, before I make that support that set for reasons that you can watch our Catholic versus Protestant streams. Be sure to watch them; they're pretty good.
Do, 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 do.
Uh, Certainly didn't bring it up just to promote the Catholic versus Protestant streams. No, sir. Uh, but you have a fundamental disagreement. There are underlying issues between Catholics and Protestants that cannot simply be waved away. Uh, I keep good relations with Catholics because I fund them, the ones I believe are Christian anyway, um, because there is some sort of brotherhood there. But there isn't when it comes to politics. You know, I've seen what happens when places get taken over by Catholics, or if there's a Protestants in a Catholic majority state. The Huguenots were massacred. Many of them were a-holes in certain ways, but most of them were not. They killed families. They killed men. They killed women. They killed children. Catholics killed Huguenots. Um, and in many cases, they actively went out of their way to kill Huguenots in the New World. There's a fort that was absolutely wiped out, man, woman, and child. And this isn't propaganda. There's the bones there. It was an interreligious war. I don't think many people, when they call for things like America to be a Catholic state or something, really understand the necessary cultural changes and including cultural degradation that would fundamentally happen to make such a change. And of course, no sci-fi writer would have the balls to write a story about a planet changing its religion, from one to another when one is directly schismatic to the other. Um, there's underlying assumptions that simply are not true and cannot be met. Um, and you can, band-aid it over by saying, the state shall not respect religion or whatever, like the founding fathers did, but that didn't work out well either.
There's
Um,
always going to be a state religion of some sort.
there's always going to be a what, sir?
A state religion of some sort.
Yep,
There's always there's always someone's morality guiding the ship of state, even if you don't
exactly.
call it religion. But all morality is religious dogma. Um, on the topic of Protestants and Catholics and political feuds, there's skeletons in the closet on both sides. I'd
Yep.
be remiss if I didn't say that. The main issue in terms of working together politically, I too have seen the blood sports on Twitter. I think number one is at the very minimum, I think we can be co-belligerents
Yep.
in that we don't fight one another, but instead fight the degrading values of the West. Um,
I'm not saying that Catholics and Protestants can't work together, but I was using as an example that there is a Cleometric secret society that is whose goal is to turn America Catholic. And as a Protestant, my perspective going into that, like there's like what I'm trying to do is take it away from the purely materialistic, the raw politics, and into things
Yeah,
that matter, about the soul. Um, I'm sure, though I, you didn't. I don't think you wrote 1,000-page tome in the Matryoshka Divide, but um, I'm sure if you have a million states like that, there's things that keep them divided more than just borders.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, and I am agreeing with you, Ben. For the right, like, what you're stating is essentially the fundamental problem with psychohistory slash cleology, which is, all right, you have a group of people who say, great, we have figured out a way how to influence society to create the future that is most desirable, right?
Hmm.
So that's fantastic. Well, Isaac Asimov leaves it as an almost unstated axiom that everybody is going to agree on what that would look like. As a great example of this, actually, one of the unspoken assumptions of the book is that the collapse of the empire, which is, the fake Rome, the future sci-fi Roman Empire, is going to be devastating, and a new rise of a new empire, and shortening the period of decline is going to be beneficial.
Mm.
And yet, that I would be very surprised if everybody who was under the control of that empire agreed with that supposition. They would go, wait a minute, you want us to contribute to building the empire back up again? Why would we do that? Right? Is just the first thing. So now you have, let's say, modern day America, you have the same sort of idea. We'll call them cleologists, using Michael Flynn's language, but essentially the same basic concept of psychohistorians going, great, we have figured out how to predict the threads of history that will allow us to shape the future that we want to see. And of course, we all agree on what the ideal society is. One person goes, right, a Catholic monarchy, and the other person goes, right, a Protestant Cromwell style, I don't know. What would you even call
Protectorate.
Cromwell's
He was a
government? Protectorate.
protector of the
Thank
kingdom,
you.
and
Thank you.
he's a
And
hero
it's
in
like,
this
right, a
house, just like
Protestant
Columbus.
Cromwell style protectorate. And then both sides stare at each other and go, wait, what? Uh, because there is no guarantee that everybody is going to agree. And indeed, it seems highly likely that they won't agree on what the ideal best version of what the future would look like would be. So, inevitably, if this sort of technology happened, I think Flynn is correct. You would start to see a fracturing into different societies, all trying to figure out how to shape the future. In a sense, that is what we get in real life nowadays. What is the government's deep state but a group of people who are trying to shape society secretly in the way that they want it to go? It's just that, unlike in in science fiction, they are very, very bad at predicting what will happen. But fundamentally, they are trying to do that. Uh, like, I really do want to stress a point. Like, if you think about the very premise of Foundation, assumes that everybody there is agreed that the fall of the Empire is bad and its inevitable revival is good. And you would want to shorten that, right? And like, if you think about that for more than like 30 seconds, it becomes really obvious why this is definitely not going to be the case. Like, you would immediately have so many groups of people who would be going, but the Empire was horrible for me, right? Like, why would we want the Empire to rise again? I don't see why we should be contributing any resources to this project.
To be fair, Isaac Asimov, he took on those criticisms, but he came up with a worse solution, which was a galactic hive mind called Galaxia in the fourth and fifth books. And basically, his solution to that critique is, all right, we're going to go full steam into transhumanism.
Well, I've never read the fourth or fifth books because of their poor reception. I am shocked and astounded that the transhumanist is promoting transhumanism. What are we coming to? All right. Uh, that's fascinating. I like that. I'm loving this conversation. If you have a little more time, why don't you dive in? I'm sure into your inspirations. I'm sure Foundation and Isaac Asimov was an inspiration to this. Um, What else would you say that went into this that you feel worth mentioning?
Um, I'd say C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man. It's not a fictional work, but it inspired a lot of my thinking in regards to the arguments some of the characters make.
Hmm.
Um, Abolition of Man is it's the most insightful read in terms of our current society that I've ever read. It's better than 1984. It's better than Brave New World.
Hmm.
Brave New World is closer than 1984. Um, Other inspirations. I really started off with Foundation, and then I was. I'd say I picked up a lot of pieces from various sci-fi works, Star Trek, Star Wars. I particularly love Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Um, an odd inspiration, you might say, is you ever heard of a book called World War Z?
I have. It's a great favorite of mine.
I sort of one of the characters in there, it's General Singh.
Is that the? No, that's not the monk or the gentleman who
He's
went
he's
to.
never his perspective is never really given, but
Oh.
he comes up in a lot of the characters' accounts. But he's like the way the book speaks of him is of this like hyper religious uh, badass, and he goes around and basically whips up the military into shape. And I sort of plucked his archetype out from my own book. So that's an odd inspiration there, I suppose.
It's only odd that the movie was so terrible, though perhaps not so odd. Uh,
I hate what they did with the movie.
yeah.
They literally had a blueprint, and they decided instead to throw it all away just for the branding of the name.
Yep. I in my personal opinion, when I see movies like that, I always believe that basically they they had a script, they had Leonardo DiCaprio or whoever it was on board already, but then it's like, well, no one will know what this is. We own this brand, like and then it's Monster Hunter. I'm sorry, not I'll bring it up in a second, and it's World War Z. I view that anytime I hear about an author like, Larry Correa's Monster Hunter and such, being owned by Hollywood, it's like it's just a World War Z ticking time bomb. They'll have a brand or a movie that they already want to do, and then it's like, oh, no, this is it. This is what it is. We're and I don't know. I don't think Larry Correa would, but the author always comes out. Yeah, it's true to the vision. Goes back to counting money, um, etc.
Yeah,
etc.
it's hard to turn that money down. I I'm sympathetic. I understand why he took the movie deal.
Yeah. Well, Max Brooks, he's Hollywood blue blood, isn't he?
Oh, Mel Brooks is his father.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Uh, so it didn't actually shock me at all.
I think that. So first off, the World War Z audiobook is a work of art. If you've never listened to it, they have they bring in a ton of A and B list actors. I recall off the top of my head, like Martin Scorsese, Nathan Fillion, and whatever do different parts in the audiobook. Uh, and the movie is just frankly a disaster. Even if it were good, which it is not. And granted, I remember Daddy Warpig. If I don't know Isaac, if you know him, but he's in our sort of vision a lot of the time, right in the background. Daddy Warpig pointing out that the extended cut version of it was better, but the extended cut is not what was released, and I'm not going to judge the movie based on things that were cut out of the movie. But in the original version of it, the movie was not good in the first place, and even if it was good, it would have been a terrible adaptation because it was essentially unrelated to the book of the same name it was supposedly adapting, which makes it a very dishonest bait and switch.
Yes. Hmm.
I have nothing to add. That's all. That's my 2 cents on World War Z. I do think the book is great, though. So yeah.
Well, Isaac, is there? I think we've come to a natural stopping point. Isaac, is there anything else you'd like to say? To promote, to bring forth?
Buy my book. It's good.
That's
You know,
no problem at all.
thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no, you're a great guest. Really enjoyed our conversation. Because quite frankly, science fiction is sadly undiscussable for a lot of the modern stuff that's come out. Both for the terribleness of the ideas and the terribleness of the authors to discuss their ideas. But Matryoshka Divide is certainly on my lists, and I hope to enjoy it soon and perhaps have you back on whenever it comes time for your next work to come out.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you for the audience who joined us. I hope you had a wonderful evening.